First conversation is, who am I? Who's Kathy? What are we trying to do here? What's design thinking, and how do you apply it to your life? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us, and I'm going to rock and roll on this because we have an hour and a half, so you're going to be amazed at what you're going to do in an hour and a half. You probably know, because Cindy told you, that I worked with Cindy Young. So basically, one of the reasons I'm here is when I tell Cindy that she has to stretch and do what she loves, and then she asks me for help, I have to say yes. I will always say yes to Cindy. I have spent 30 years in companies, and good ones. I started my career at Hewlett-Packard, 20 years, half in sales and marketing, half in HR. I went to Gap, where I was the Senior Vice President of Talent. So I led recruiting and learning and diversity and succession and engagement and sort of an end-to-end human experience at Gap. Also helped redesign Gap. I left Gap to join Deloitte because Deloitte sucked me into this mission called, could you please come and help us build this thing that is an idea called Deloitte University. And I am proud and happy to tell you, if you ever go to Westlake, Texas, I did that building. And I also did that design of learning. Today I play, so it's a little different. I'm an instructor at Stanford in Designing Your Life, and I'll tell you how I got there. I also teach women's leadership at Antioch University, certificate program, 9 months, you can go. It's residency and online. So it's got a nice balance. And I've decided that women in leadership is a thing, and that that's something I know a lot about and I'm going to help. So imagine a room of all women. It's just stunning to me. I did not grow up in rooms of all women at HP. In fact, I was the only woman on an executive team for most of my life. When I worked with the CEO and his team, it was all white men, all old white men. And so that journey of sort of figuring out how to bring what women bring has been a journey I've been on for a long time. My mission has been and continues to be growing the people that will grow healthy business. Sherry is right. If businesses grow and they thrive, people grow and thrive, and there's more opportunity in the world. I came to Designing Your Life when I wanted to design a life. I was speaking in the program. I went to the instructor and said, I hope the building doesn't come down on my head, but Yahoo was imploding at the time. The CEO, who I had really committed to, Carol Bartz, was fired summarily. And I decided rather than just go to the next job, I wanted to design a new life. And they wouldn't let me take the class because I'm not a Stanford student, so they said, well, you have to learn it and teach it. And that's how I got there. Really, it was a journey of designing my own life. My colleague is Kathy.
Yeah, so I'm Kathy Davies, and I actually come from tech. So I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer trained, and I've spent 15 plus years working as an engineer. So working as an engineer in mechanical products, we're building biomedical products, heart devices, working in software, and working basically as somebody who is building product. So I'm all about product. And went through the Stanford product design program, got my master's there and learned the design thinking process. And I learned it as a process for building product, for building things. And went back to the Stanford product design 50-year reunion, and they said, product design is exploding. It's gonna be the largest major at Stanford soon. It's third largest major right now. And we're having more and more classes. And so I sort of sidled up to the guy who was running the product design program, and I said, sounds like you're going to be needing instructors. Here's my card. And I knew him from the past. It's not like it was a complete blind introduction. But I started teaching there, teaching product design. Again, teaching this process. How do you take a product from talking to users, understanding how the product works, testing the product out there, getting feedback from people, really understanding their needs, doing that iteratively to bring innovation into the space. And while I was doing that, I realized, I love this. I love teaching. I want to do more of this. And like Susan, I heard about this Designing Your Life thing. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm in a place where I want to design my life. And so I again sort of sidled up, hey, I hear there's this designing your life thing. And they said, well, you're already teaching here at Stanford. How would you like to get involved with teaching that? And so I did. And what I realized was this design process, it's great for product, but it's also great for people because it's all about trying things and building your way forward. And so I realized, actually, this is something that applies to many domains. It applies to social change. And so I've had the good fortune of teaching design thinking in Myanmar, where they're reinventing their society. I've had the good fortune to be involved in health initiatives in the East Bay, where people are trying to change the way that they are active with their bodies and change their physical profile, their physical health. So my mission is to take design thinking and to use it much more broadly than product to actually impact people's lives and the way that they approach the world. And so designing your life seems like a good place to start.
Okay, so that's who we are and why we're here. This is a 1.5-day workshop, and the goal of it is to empower conscious competency. So conscious competency, being really good at career and life wayfinding. And we say wayfinding because you're finding your way. And by the way, you're going to, as Sherry said, find your way a lot because you are going to live a long time. And the career I started with is not the career I have today. In fact, I've had 3 really different ones. And I kind of think you might too. So it's a good skill to have. What we're going to do, we said, well, what can we do in, and I thought it was 2 hours. I know it's an hour and a half, so don't panic. What could we do in this time frame? And we said, well, we're going to give you the design thinking appetizer. So you are going to get some design thinking. So this is a 2-for-1. You're going to get the mindsets and tools. And then we said, since design thinking is so good for wicked problems, which we will define, what is the wicked problem women always ask me about? Always. No matter what panel I'm on, no matter what we're talking about, they ask me about work-life balance. So what the heck? Let's just go for it, right? So that is the wicked problem we are going to work on now. Is there anybody who doesn't want to work on that problem? Because you can go, really. You don't have to stay if that's not a problem you want to work on. I sometimes get stuck in these workshops because I look at the thing and I think it's really cool, and then they're doing something I don't want them to do, and I can't leave. I'm giving you permission. If this is not what you're here for, it's totally okay. This is what we're going to do. We're in the beginning part. You're going to get some of this workshop, what this is about, and we're going to go right into designing your life. We're going to look at balance. We're going to define the problem. Designers are phenomenal at defining problems. And we're going to frame and reframe that. We're going to do block busting and ideation because product development, design is about ideas. It's about ideation, and it's also about busting through all of the blocks that prevent you, and then we're going to close with a bias to action. Designers test, prototype, play. It is an action-oriented sport. It's not a sport where you're on the sidelines. Is that fair? Okay. It is not a workshop that gives you an epiphany. If you have one, it's awesome. Sometimes people do. Cindy said she had an epiphany talking to me. I thought we just had lunch. It isn't about this one true passion. I really resonated with what Sherry said. I have a lot of passions, right? You don't have to find the one thing that, just free yourself of that notion. And it'll give you some plans, but there's no the plan because life happens. Things you do not expect occur. A lot. So, what we do instead is a framework. I'm going to give you a framework, and it's actually in your handout. We're going to give you a couple tools. In the full class, you get a lot of tools. Some mindsets. So much is about how you think about things. You heard framing a victim or reframe. I'm empowered and I have control and choice. Frame, reframe. And lifelong practices. These are not things you do once, okay? So how do we work together? I'm going really fast, I know. We call it 4 C's, and it's really important or this is not going to work. This is a community now. You have become a community on a journey to design your life. Confidential, non-judgmental. Let's pretend I'm sitting at the table and I'm saying, gosh, I really don't like my job right now. That's a confidential conversation. We don't need to tell everybody else, I sat with this person from, and she really doesn't like her job. We don't need to do that, okay? It's a confidential conversation. It's not judgmental. It is about listening, reflecting back. Really, it's an open dialogue. Construct will be design thinking. So we will use that construct to unlock it. And you got to be present. If you feel like I have to do that email, go do that email. But don't do it when we're talking to each other about our life and our balance. And then conversation. Make it personal. It's about you. It's not some people will say or those people do. It's me. I'm having a problem right now with balance and it looks like this. Okay? Because the more you can name that and frame it, the more we can find ways to get there. Is that fair? You on for the 4 C's with us? Okay, let's talk about design thinking.
Yeah, so how many of you guys have heard of design thinking? I mean, I think Helen made a plug for it out there, so it was kind of a nice tee up. I was enjoying that. So design thinking is one of a number of kinds of thinking. We've got lots of problem-solving skills at our disposal, and I'm not going to tell you that design thinking is the panacea. Like, you can use it for everything, right? If you need to build a bridge, right, you're going to need engineering thinking. And that's all about solving your way forward. That's about using some equations that you already have in hand. We know how to build bridges. Use that kind of thinking. It's useful. If you are trying to build a business, you have outcomes that you're trying to optimize for. So business thinking is absolutely appropriate at that time. If you're a researcher, you have hypotheses that you have come up with that you're trying to prove. So use that research thinking. It's useful. But for design thinking, it's all about building your way forward. And design thinking is really about solving problems that don't fall into a category where common kinds of thinking will work. Right? Design thinking is all about wicked problems. So Susan said we would define what a wicked problem is. Has anybody heard of a wicked problem? Somebody know what that is? It's actually a term of art, and what it means is a problem that changes as you're trying to solve it. You don't actually know what you want the answer to be necessarily. It's a problem that money won't solve. Right? Some problems it's like, okay, I just need to lay down some cash. I got to hire somebody to do that thing. Right? But a wicked problem is not like that. A wicked problem is something that is in and of itself complex enough and tricky enough that we may not even know where to start when we're tackling it. And for problems like that, design thinking is great. These are problems like, what do I do with my life? How do I find love? How do I educate myself? How do I break through barriers that are coming up for me over and over? How do I get to know what matters to me? These aren't things that an equation or an optimization strategy will work for. And so design thinking is a way to crack that. Design thinking is a process, and it's a process for product. I was talking about that before. I'm an engineer. I learned this as, like, how am I going to build the next heart implant, right? And this process starts with empathizing with users. And Helen was talking about that a little bit. She said, you go out and you talk to customers and you find out what they want and you hear all of their diverse voices. And then you understand what it is that they need, truly need and value. And then you define who and what are you trying to work on, right? What is the problem at hand? And we define it narrowly enough that we can actually work on being the right thing for the right person. And in our case, we're talking about designing our lives. And so that person that we're empathizing with and that we're defining a problem for is ourselves. And so we need to know, who are we? And what do we want to work on? Because there's a lot to work on. Our lives are complex and they have lots of pieces. And so we're going to define a particular problem. The next step of the process is ideation. If you have a problem that you're trying to solve, it's good to have lots of ideas. Get as many as you can, and then choose. Because we're often locked into assumptions and constraints that are put on us by society, other people, ourselves, our upbringing. All that stuff comes into play. And so we need to break past those assumptions and constraints and open up the solution space available to us. And we do that by ideating. And then we need to test our ideas. Choose some and try them. Prototype and test. Because it's through learning and trying these things and getting feedback from the world that we can then know more about ourselves and then repeat this process. And this process is truly iterative. And it really starts by accepting who we are and where we are and going from there. It's also a culture of mindsets. Design thinking is not just this process, but it's how you approach it. I think Lee Iacocca said, culture eats process for lunch, right? You guys have heard that before? So we're going to be radically collaborating. We were talking about intersectionality. We're talking about all the diverse voices around us. Who are we? What are all the layers that we bring to the problem? What are the things that people who are different from us might see that we don't see? And that's what radical collaboration is about. It's about bringing in those voices that give you different perspectives. Reframing is what Susan was talking about just a minute ago. You look at a problem one way, or a situation one way, and then you can look at it a different way. How can you bring a new lens such that you have more solutions available to you? Curiosity, I think, is really the cornerstone. Because there's so many things we don't know. And so if we're genuinely curious about ourselves and about others, then we're going to find out some things that are going to lead us forward. And we're in a process. And being mindful of where we are in that process is super important. Can we take this big problem we're trying to solve and break it down into small steps? Do we realize that we're at the beginning? And so we're beating ourselves up for not having a solution yet, but that's not appropriate because we're at the beginning of our process. Or is it that we are somewhere in our career and we want to be somewhere else, but we're not yet? And so being mindful of where we are and what's appropriate at this moment then frees us from worrying about those things that aren't yet part of where we are in our process. And then, this is my favorite. I got to admit, this is my very favorite. Bias to action. Because let's face it, ideas are cheap. If we don't do something, that's just pictures on our phone of Post-its on a wall, right? It's a bunch of ideas on a list that we never get to. It's the bucket list that we never actually go out and experience. And that stuff's fun to have, but it doesn't teach us anything. So in order to get something out of design thinking and get something out of this workshop, I'm going to ask you to do stuff. Okay, so all of that stuff can be about product. To make it about our lives, we wrap it in a little bit of a framework. We wrap it in meaning making, so really digging into what means stuff to us. And we wrap it in our community. Because in order to do this stuff, we need support from those around us. We need to tell people about our ideas and our goals and our dreams, and we need to recruit them into our process. You heard in the panel, people were talking about get a cheerleader, get a mentor, get a sponsor. So we need those people. We need that support layer in designing our lives. Okay, so we're going to dive right in and do it.
All right, so it's all about this wicked problem called, and you are going to do the first couple steps. Empathize with yourselves, and when I partner you up with the person you pair up with, define what is this wicked problem called balance, work-life, point of view, make meaning about it, and we're going to do some reframing. So let's start with this picture. When people ask me about balance, there's this massive assumption that there's work and life, that somehow it's even and it's all balanced wonderfully. And they usually say, Susan, you had 2 little kids and you're an executive. How did you do that? Like it always looked like that? Quite never. Quite never. And there's this notion that a balanced life is just perfect, right? Everything's there that you want. It's all in the right place. Flavor's the right amount. It tastes great and it lasts. This seems to be the ideal, right? And I think it's not. I think there's a lot of social expectation and judgment about what is balance. So what I want to ask you is, as we start on this wicked problem and we begin to frame it, what does balance mean to you? What does it mean to you? And I'm picking on you because I know you, darling. No, you can't look around. That would be you. What does it mean?
If I'm speaking honestly,
Yes.
honestly, balance means that everything gets the same and equal amount of time.
Okay. So you're on the perfect parfait side.
Yes.
Everything is the same amount, right? And it's all there. What else?
I think of giving without resentment.
Giving without resentment. Say more.
In that I may be giving different amounts to different parts of my life, but I'm not resentful of how much I'm giving to one or the other. There's like almost a re-energizing because I don't have that resentment or hatred towards what I'm doing.
Cool. So she said a lot. I'm going to repeat it because just so you can all hear. But giving without resentment, that when I'm giving parts of my life and energy to something, I don't resent it. I feel like it's all balanced in how I've defined it. Go ahead.
I think one achieves balance when they're at peace with their priorities.
Nice. At peace with your priorities. The other thing you said, both of you, a little bit is there's more parts of life. Like work, life, who made that? Life is big and work is a piece of it. And there's other parts, aren't there? Like I think of work. I think of health. I think of health a lot now because I actually got sick a little bit, and that kind of went, wow, that came out of the blue. Love. Don't you think about love? Family love, partner love, friend love. Maybe if you have a religious life, I put love in there. Play. I have to tell you, I just did this last week in the women's leadership, and a lady raised her hand. She goes, "What's play?" Okay, that tells us something. What's play to you? What's play? I just pick people randomly.
Activities that you enjoy.
Yeah, doing stuff you like. It's fun. Having fun. Having fun. So I think life's multidimensional, and this is the wicked problem I want us to think about. All those things in what you're looking for, that perfect parfait. I'm not dinging the perfect parfait. I just think you gotta feel it's gonna work for you. Okay? So you jot some, by the way, last page is a notes page in this little thing. Jot some notes down on what does balance mean to me? Because this is the wicked problem you're gonna work on. So we're just gonna do, right? The panel is awesome because they said the first thing you have to do is know yourself. So here we go. I want you to identify your ideal spot, that's a heart, on each of these categories, and then a you are here arrow for where you are now. I'm going to show you an example, so don't start yet. And this is the dashboard, and then you're going to put some notes down. If there's a gap, what's that gap about? So let me give you my example. I'm going to tell you something. My example would look really different when I was the managing director at Deloitte, but I'm not now, so this example looks different. Love, I started with. You wouldn't believe this, but now that I'm actually working less, my husband and I are on these parallel paths and I hardly see him. I wrote Passing Ships in the Night. My kids are on their own, so I don't have this consistent connect time. And I want to be more present as a sister, a daughter. I'm helping my mom who had a stroke, an aunt. I've got young nieces and nephews who look up to me and kind of want some aunt time. I've never thought about being an aunt, especially when I was busy, right? And a friend. I let some of my friendships go when I was traveling around the world being an executive. I want to be full. I'm like you. I want my fullness there. And I'm kind of not that full, but I have been working on it. That's why the arrow's closer. It started out a little more over here. Play. Play, I'm really, most of the people I do this with, women especially, there are plays down here and they go, wow, you mean it could be here? So I want to get back to the creative side of Susan. I've been on the analytical business side for 35 years. I want to re-engage with poetry. I used to write poetry. I want to do more stuff in the jazz world. My son's a jazz musician. I love jazz. He grew up with it. I want to travel a little. Like, I want to have some fun. So I got to do something about that gap, right? You notice I've taken notes on my gap. And then we get to work. Well, guess what? I'm full of work. I'm not supposed to be, which is ironic. I'm doing these slides last night at 11. My daughter looks at me, she goes, I thought you weren't like working full time. So I got to get back to the half because that's my commitment, right? So I got to figure that out. And I said, redesign this ASAP at 11 o'clock last night doing the slide. And health. I'm much better now that I'm working on this. I'm paying attention to it because I had a wake-up call. And that is my redesigned dashboard that I am going for. Okay? Do you see how to do this? Now I want you to do this. I'm going to tell you some things you could do to get balance-ish, just to give you some ideas so you can start jotting down, oh, there's a gap. What do I do with this gap? One thing is you could reprioritize. Another is you can compromise and defer. I did a compromise and defer on my Deloitte gig. Stacy was here. She knows this. I said, okay, I'm going to travel every week and not be at home as much. I am compromising and deferring the being home. My kids were both in college, so I felt okay about that. But there was this guy I lived with that I probably was okay with it conceptually when we started the gig. But year 3 sat me down and said, the gig is no longer working, right? So the compromise and defer worked. But at the 3-year mark, I actually wrote a letter to my colleagues at Deloitte and said, I'm not going to stay here anymore. There's this guy I kind of love. Reframe, change your mind. I love the story of just change how you look at it. Like, just change your mind. Remember the job, the telemarketing job, and she thought it was kind of bogus, staffy thing, not so good. She reframed it into entrepreneurial opportunity to do innovation. And it was. Isn't that interesting? Time box, this is what I'm doing now. Because when you work, anybody work at home? Do you ever find yourself in your jammies not having taken a shower?
All day long.
You know, and it's dinner time. I'm like, what happened? So now I'm saying, time box that stuff. I move to the beach and I don't walk on it. How is that possible? So I actually schedule on my calendar, walk on the beach. And then more ideas will come to you as we go into ideation. So you get where we're going. We're going to assess, and then we're going to pick options. And you're going to get even more than this. I'm just giving you a couple. So I want you to start. You have about 5 minutes to do your assessment. What I want you to do is pair up with someone you don't know, which should be pretty simple. I want you to share with them what balance means to you. You have 5 minutes to do this. And I want you to show them your assessment and talk about your gaps. All right, listeners, what are you doing? You're listening, which is huge. So you're not thinking about what you're going to say or your stuff. You're also empathizing. First step in design. Because this person you're going to work with this person to help them. You're going to be a product designer who designs for them. So really empathize, listen, put yourself in their shoes, ask things like, you know, for those of you who are sharing, what do you see that I don't see is a great question. And ask them to reframe back to you what they heard as your problem. Okay? So pair up, 5 minutes. I'll gong you at the end of 5, and we'll do the next person. 5 minutes each. All right, so how was that to be empathized with? How many people felt someone empathized with them? How'd that feel? Good. Did that feel good to be listened to? Did they help you at all frame your problem? Yeah. I see nods. Empathy can actually help frame a problem. So you have an idea of the problem you want to solve. And now we're going to go into some ideation and framing. Are you ready? Okay.
All right. Cool, go. All right, so we are going to dive into an ideation technique. And before I do that, I want to talk a little bit more about why we ideate. So how many of you guys, as you were looking at your balance thing, had some voices that weren't your own in the back of your head about what you should be doing? Anybody have any of that? What were some of the voices? What did you hear? And what should you be doing?
What should I be doing? I should be just doing better. I think that's what the voice always says.
I should be doing better. Yeah, I should be doing better. I should be doing more. Who else heard of kind of a voice in the back of their head? What'd you hear?
I should be working full time.
I should be working full time. I should be doubling down on my career. Who says that?
The person that where there's the expectation that you have an MBA, so you should be working full time and be successful, and that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, I have this education. I have a responsibility. I should be doing more. Yeah. Who else had a voice in the back of their head? Way back in there, back.
Spend more time with kids.
I should be spending more time with my kids. Am I a good mom? Right, so we have all of these pressures, right? Everybody has things that they should be doing because somebody said that you should be more. Right? It should be more. And so all of those assumptions, those constraints, those voices, they crush down the solutions that we see available to us. I can't work full time because I need to be spending time with my kids. I can't take that job because I can't travel because I don't want to be away from my aging mom. I can't move here because I won't be accepted in that community. I can't, right? So the ideation process is about releasing constraints and assumptions. The whole thing is about trying to open up the solutions available to you. So we're going to dive into this, and we're going to use radical collaboration and reframing to get us to a place where hopefully we have things that we can do when we leave here that might alter our balance in a way that we want to alter it. Okay, so we're going to do brainstorming. And we're going to do it like this. This is how we teach it at Stanford. And it's a very particular process. How many of you guys have brainstormed before? Yeah, everybody thinks they've brainstormed before. They've all done it. Yeah, we know how to brainstorm. Actually, brainstorming is hard, and it takes practice. And there are actually some ways to do it that can make you more successful. And these are things that you can bring to your teams, doing whatever you're doing, to help get more ideas and bring more voices into the conversation to solve whatever problem that you want to solve. So this process, we're going to use it on our life today, but you can also take this process home to you, to your work, to your family, to your community, and use it however you like. It starts with framing a good problem, and we've started to work on that, right? We're looking at this balance problem, and the framing of the problem matters. Then we warm up. This is the part that nobody does. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to ideate to get lots of ideas, but it doesn't stop there. Then we're going to actually choose some ideas to build on and learn from and prototype, to get insights from and to take action around. So we're going to go through all these steps. We're going to start with framing and reframing. And I said before, framing is really important. And framing is important because how you ask the question determines what solutions are available to you. If I ask the question, how can I go back to work full time? I've already assumed some things. I've assumed that I need to go back to work full time. I've assumed that full time means a certain thing to me. What is full time? I have made some assumptions about what the work week looks like. So I have all of these things that I may or may not be aware of. And so how I ask myself this question, maybe it's not that I need to go back to work full time. It's really, how do I get enough money to do what I need to do? And I think working full time is how to get there. Right? So what designers do is they restate the original problem, looking at really what are the outcomes? What are the things you're really trying to get at? How can I state this differently so that I have more options available to me? Because how do I go back to work full time is a different question than how do I have enough money to do X, to pay rent, to travel, to afford my kids' private school education, to buy a car, right? And maybe it's not even enough money. Like, what is that? It's really, how do I buy a car? Or how do I get the apartment in the city that I want? And so by digging down into really what it is you're after, you have greater clarity and maybe different solutions available to you.
Trying is really important. Prototyping is what designers do. I don't know if you know, but there were thousands of prototypes for a thing called a mouse. So prototype what you want and try it. Just try it. I did this last week, and I was working on something called, I really don't want to keep doing things like laundry, grocery shop, like all this tedious stuff's getting in my way. And one of the brainstorms was outsource laundry. I never thought of outsourcing laundry. This woman had outsourced laundry. It just came back all done. I thought, God, that can happen for me? Like, that's too expensive. She goes, no, it's not too expensive. You'd be surprised. And guess what? I tried it. It is like awesome. So we are out of time. I want to say two things. Take away from this. And we didn't do the energy piece that's in your handout. That was when I thought we had 2 hours. There's more to this. A lot more to this than what we just did. I do this because defining balance means something different at every time of your life, and only you can define it. So if you want all your gauges full, terrific. If you want some half full, that's fine. Nobody gets to define it but you. And you can design balance and energy in your life. Designing your life for women does more than what we just did. And we start with the meaning of work, and we start with the meaning of your life. So we start heavy. We start with your point of view, what happiness is, what a coherent life looks like, and then we do a ton of tools and mindsets. This was one, right? So we do energy assessment, we do balance assessment, we do change and impact assessment, we do gravity problems, we do networking, we build 3 Odyssey plans for your future because you should never build one. 3 is a number that's researched. If you have 3 alternative lives, it will help you think of the life you really want to pursue for now. And then a lot of action, testing, prototyping, discernment. How do you choose? So that's what this is about. If you want more information, we put our emails on the front. We're here at lunch. We were going to have a little Q&A, but it is lunchtime. We're here. If you have questions, we're happy to answer. Thank you so much for engaging.
You guys are awesome.